I cosplay Lilith Vegapunk, and at conventions, I'm always stopped and people are always asking me about my prop. What is it? It looks so cool. So my prop is called the bubble gun, and what's really cool about my bubble gun is that it spits bubbles. Because why have a prop that's called a bubble gun if it can't spit bubbles? So if you want to know how to make this massive prop, then keep on watching. I knew right away I wanted to 3D print this prop, so I went into Blender and I started making the 3D model, and I actually succeeded in creating the one part, which is the sphere here. However, I realized early on that I wasn't able to create this entire 3D model in Blender because 3D modeling just makes me really sick. I have an issue with just playing video games in general. I could be playing a video game like Fallout 3 or Skyrim or even Minecraft, and I just get sick. So it's just a motion thing for me. So I decided that if I could find a really nice 3D model online, then I would purchase it. And luckily that happened because Spears Master here created one. So I bought it and I started just printing the bottom pieces first. My 3D printer, if you were curious, is the Creality K1, and the filament I'm using is the Creality brand Hyper PLA. So this 3D printer prints really fast, and if you use the exact filament that I'm using, it cuts most 3D prints time in half, so I did save a lot of time because of that. But these prints still took a long time. Like this one was 6 hours, I had another one that was 4 hours. 7-hour prints, so you're not really saving much time. There's like no quick way out of this.
So I am getting ready for day 3 of 3D printing, and I already have the whole entire bottom done. What I'm gonna do now is edit the 3D file, because the file that I have here, it's short. Okay, it's supposed to be I think 140 centimeters, which is like 4 feet tall, but I want it to be taller even though I am short. So I'm going to be taking the handle and I'm going to try to extend the handle to be at my height.
I also want to make it clear that Spears Master is not like paying me in any type of way to talk about this 3D print, but I love this 3D model because not only is it cool, but the way how the parts are, some of them snap together. So the whole bottom part stuck together because like they snapped into place, which is really cool. But going on to assembly, the middle part is hollow, and I did have PVC pipes at my house already, but they were too big. So I ended up going to Lowe's with a piece of the handle, and I couldn't find a PVC pipe small enough to fit the prop. So I ended up buying a big PVC pipe and cutting out part of the center, and then I used a heat gun with heat safe gloves, and I just like forced it into the right shape, and that's what I used for the center part of my bubble gun. Now that I have like most of my parts printed, I have to get rid of the layer lines. You don't have to, but I wanted the layer lines gone. So what I do to make my prints nice and smooth is I take Bondo with acetone, and I wear gloves and a mask when I do this. Trust me, you do not want to be smelling this stuff, but essentially you take the Bondo with the acetone, you mix it together, and I just use a paintbrush and I paint it only on the parts that are going to be covered in paint. You don't want to get this stuff covered on parts that you're going to be gluing together. But I did 2 layers of the Bondo, and then I took, I think that's 320 or 350 grit sandpaper, but I go in and I wet sand everything, and then I go back in with another layer of the Bondo and acetone because I really want this to be smooth. And after I do that, I do another round of wet sanding with a finer grit sandpaper. And the reason why I use Bondo with acetone is because the acetone dries really fast, so you're not waiting an eternity for the Bondo to dry to get into the wet sanding. And then I wet sand, one because it gets it really smooth, but also because it prevents the dust from getting everywhere. But yeah, the Bondo settles in between the grooves and you're just left with something like this where it's like nice and smooth. And I just find this process more effective than just taking sandpaper and sanding out all the layer lines smooth. And then after I do that, I take a gray sandable spray primer and I coat all of my parts, and then I take the finest grit sandpaper I could find and just lightly sand it. And this is why I do that. You can see where I didn't prime with the Bondo and where I did prime with the Bondo. It's just nice and smooth. It's a bit of a process, but I think it's worth it. And there are some parts of the 3D print that I do glue together before I prime with the Bondo. For example, the little rivets on the sphere. I glue the rivets to the sphere so that I could, when I prime the actual sphere, if there is a little bit of a gap, I could fill it in with the Bondo. And I do the same thing with the bottom part. This is like the very bottom part that rests on the floor. That was cut in half. So if I glue it together, right as I prime it with the Bondo, I can fill in the gap if there is the gap if I don't like line it up perfectly. So I'm just priming the surfaces also that are only going to be touched with paint, not the parts that are going to be glued together eventually.
I don't think people understand how much this is gonna be my baby. I'm literally gonna turn into little Vegapunk because this is my baby. I am making this gun and I'm gonna... It's like, oh, I remember printing this and now I'm gluing it together and it's like another step closer to it being finished and I am so happy. To review this glue, I'd say it's really good, but you have to be careful with it. As for the consistency, it does say here that it is a syrupy glue, and it is true. I could unscrew it, hold it upside down without squeezing it, and it just like runs out. So it's kind of like maple syrup. It's like less of a, yeah. I say it's less runny than maple syrup. Yeah, I'm even doing this right now, and it's runny. But I put like a little dollop onto these parts here, and just a tiny bit of glue and holding it there for like 3 seconds was enough to hold it in place, but not enough so that like I couldn't readjust it. It says here that you have like 5 to 6 minutes of working time before it starts to set, and I do believe that. I glued this like a few minutes ago. I put the glue onto its top part, placed it right here, and I was able to like move it around, but I'd say after like 2 minutes it really starts to set. And again, it's been a few minutes, but look, I don't want to move it around too much because it does have to, like, you need to let it cure, so I'm gonna let it cure for 24 hours. But it's standing like that and it's okay, so I don't really see a problem. Overall, I think that this 3D print file it's definitely worth it. The thing that I struggled with the most while printing is the top part of the ring. Now, it came pre-sliced like this, and to my own judgment, I was like, okay, I'm gonna print it from the bottom up. When it generated support, it didn't really need a lot. It would just need like a little bit of filaments. Like, I don't think support was necessary for this, but when printing, you get all this on the ring part here, which is like the part that touches the build plate. And this happened to all 3 pieces. You get like this stringiness when like the first 5 minutes of the print, and then you get this, which is great, but like, this is like the only bad thing I would say about this print, because it was unclear if this part needed support, and it didn't really need support because, again, it printed well like this. I just don't understand why this part didn't print as well, but it's nothing a little sanding and Bondo can't fix.
So as I'm gluing the upper part of the funnel thing there, I did struggle. This was the only time like I struggled gluing the parts together because I couldn't get the parts to sit flush, even though they did fit up together well. It might have been just user error, but the lips, there is like a little off part to them. Okay, I ran out of Bondo, so I'm stopping for today. I could go to the store and get some more, but it is New Year's Eve, which means there's a bunch of drunk people driving on the street probably, and I don't want to risk it. So this is our stopping point for today. My main goal
is to try to get this part fixed.
And fix it I did with a lot of patience and a lot of layers of Bondo and sanding. But with all the other parts, I just sprayed it with the sandable primer and did a wet sanding, and I was good to go for painting. When it came to painting the bottom parts, I put masking tape in the grooves because I am going to be gluing the rockets to there, and I don't want any product, so the masking tape blocks that.
I got a circle. It's like a steering wheel. Or, I saw this. Okay, think of it, okay? Xena. The chakram from Xena. Don't you see it? Anyway, believe it or not, out of the entire bubblegum thing, this was the hardest thing to print. Okay? Because it's the only file that wasn't pre-sliced, so I had to slice it myself. And it should have been easy, but the way how, like this part is one corner, and then I also have this corner that's one piece, but then I realized that it had trouble printing. So like if you could see here, like it's not a perfect clean print. So then for the last two, I decided to cut the shape in half and then print two parts and have them be glued together. Also within the slicer, I edited it so that it could have these little tiny holes. There's like little 1mm holes. Yeah, not every hole has like an in and out because it's blocked. Because again, I printed two of some same pieces and glued them together. And for some reason the holes didn't line up, so I'm gonna have to just take a drill and drill them. I didn't think this through. I'm gonna have to cover this in Bondo and sand it down. But there's 1mm holes on the insides. I did not think that through. Well, anyway, that's the later me's problem. What I'm gonna do now is, of course, since I'm the one who printed this, it doesn't like fit perfectly together. There's this gap. I did have to cut off a little bit from this so it could fit into a perfect circle because, of course, when I printed it, it wasn't a perfect circle.
But I did use Bondo to smooth out those connecting parts and then smooth out the rest of the print. And then I did take a small Dremel and just did the holes on the inside part of the ring. So I was good to go for that. Then it became time to airbrushing the bottom part of the bubble gun. So I just took my white paint, which is the Createx opaque line. All the paint I used for this entire project and every single cosplay project I've ever done, I use Createx paint. But to get clean lines, I did use my, this is actually my drawing tape, and I just went back and forth, did a few layers of that, and it got me some pretty crisp lines, I will say myself. And I also will say that I am airbrushing this. I did most of this project in my basement in December, and while I was airbrushing this bubble gun, my hands turned purple at one point because I got so cold. So I'll have you know that I did make myself suffer in that way. And right here, I am just peeling off the tape. It is a very satisfying process, so I'll just shut up and enjoy the process. After I removed the tape, I did feel a little bit of texture, so I just took a very fine grit sandpaper and sanded the edges just enough to make them flush against the surface. And then I went in with masking tape this time to cover up the white. Now, one thing that I did was I took this masking tape, okay? I put it on my arm a few times so that it could get less sticky, and I put it onto the part. I spray painted this red, and I was heartbroken when I was peeling off the tape because some of the white paint started to lift. I didn't like do this back to back. Like I painted the red and the white on different days, but the white paint just started to lift up. So with that, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna try a different process. So I started taking the tape and I started like sticking it onto my forehead in addition to like doing it on my arm, and that worked. But there was still like a little specks of white that were lifting up. So I just ended up using some plastic wrap with the masking tape to cover up most parts, but I did struggle a lot with the paint lifting up and the masking tape. I ended up fixing that by hand then, but if you have any advice on how I could stop the paint from lifting, I will greatly appreciate it because it saved me so much time and I would love to use masking tape more. But enough with that, let's talk about electronics. So, first thing I did was I bought a bubble gun off of Shein.
So I have here the inside of the bubble gun, and I'm gonna cover up the bubbles come out from here. I'm just gonna cover this up because I don't want bubbles to be spraying out. Because what I'm focusing on is this right here. This is a speaker. And when I touch this to the battery source, damn it, hold on. When I touch this to the battery source, so this is a speaker playing under the sea. So what I want to do is I'm either going to remove it, or if I could program this to play a one-piece song, I will be very happy. The problem is I've never worked with this before, so let's figure out what kind of chip this is.
I didn't do that, but I did chop off the handle of the bubble gun and kept the motor, and I just rewired it. This is the electronics part for my bubble gun. I have my battery pack here. This is just the same battery pack from the bubble gun. I just chopped that off and resoldered the wires. So I have a ground and a 5-volt wire, a black and a red wire going through it. So I have the wires going through this tube, and I drilled a hole through the PVC pipe and this 3D print handle, and put a little switch inside of this trigger here, so I could turn the bubble machine off and on. And so then the wires continue down the PVC pipe. And then right here I have a lot of excess wire. This is where the motor and the bubble solution is going to be on the top of the bubble gun. Now, I have excess wire because I do need to be able to remove the motor because it is attached to the bubble solution container. So if I want to change or empty the bubble solution, I have the wiggle room to do so. Same thing with the bottom part here. I have the excess wire because this is going to go velcroed on the side of the bubble gun. So the battery pack, wire, all this should be good to go. So with that all set, I was ready to finally put the handle onto the PVC pipe. So I just put down a layer of glue and I would like shove down the handle down the PVC pipe. But then I was ready to finally test out the bubbles. So I was so excited. I turn it on for the first time and I see this. I mean, I know my expectations shouldn't have been that high since the bubble gun was from Shein, but I could fix this. So I bought a more expensive bubble gun. I took the motor from that, and to make myself feel better, I added the white parts to the handle. And when I tested this out, this is worthy of being called a bubble gun. I was in good spirits. Nothing could bring down my good mood. Okay? Nothing. I messed up. I was thinking, okay, I was like, okay, all I have to do is paint these pink and paint this and this blue, and then I'm done. But then I was like, hold on, there's another piece that's blue. Oh no, there's a ring that goes here that you just saw in the last clip that I made, and I sanded, and it's perfect. And I can't put it on the bubble gun right now because there's no way it won't fit on the top. The only way how I can get the ring to go through right now is if I take out the rockets on the bottom. But the rockets here are super glued in, and I don't want to test the limits and see how breakable they are. I don't want to do that. But I really want the ring because I made the ring. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna finish painting this. I don't think it's the end of the world if I don't get the ring on it right now. I want to finish painting this, get it done. And then if I still have time, then I'll probably remove the rings, the rockets, and then glue them back in. Hopefully it won't be too much of a hassle. Tape this up, ready to airbrush it, and ready to finish with the bubble gun, okay? So I come here, I mix two paints. I mix a white and I mix a light pink. I actually start airbrushing, okay? And I'm like, okay, great. I'm gonna finish this by today. By the time I fall asleep, this bubble gun will be finished. Nope. Because this doesn't work. This doesn't want to turn on. It's plugged in. I was airbrushing and then the air pressure just started getting weaker and weaker, and now it doesn't want to work at all. So now I gotta buy a new air pump. I'm pissed. Okay, every time I airbrush, I have this dilemma where I feel like nothing is saturated enough. Like the color is not there, and I like see patchiness. And I see that every time I do this. So I'm just gonna rip off the tape and see what happened. I'm actually nervous because I had to keep the tape on for 2 days because my airbrush died. Okay, right here, I want to die because that just completely messed up. But let's hope that that's the only one that's messed up. I did these. It's coming out okay. So, let's continue. You're okay. You're alright. My soul is leaving my body. Okay. By the way, if you're saying that the paint is peeling up because the tape is too sticky, I'll have you know that I have combination skin that's like very oily, and I stuck this to my forehead and my arm before putting it on. So while I was having my series of unfortunate events, I went to my dad and I complained about the ring, about how like I can't get it on to the bubble gun. And as I'm telling him that, I dropped it on the floor by accident and it broke in half. And my dad was like, there's your solution, it broke in half. You don't have to break apart the bubble gun. So I'm airbrushing my thing, and one thing I noticed is that you can use press and seal instead of masking tape. It does not peel the paint off. So there's that information. After my series of unfortunate events, just getting to sit down and paint black lines was so relaxing and satisfying to me that I was in such a good place. I went back to the ring. So I took my ring that was broken in half. Like, I didn't even record it because I was that devastated. But I glued it back around the base of the bubble gun. And then I ended up taking clear fishing line, and then with the help of my dad, we did this weird interesting knot to get the ring suspended in the middle of the air. Essentially, we took we weaved it through one hole, wrapped it around a whole base, and then we would weave it through another hole. And we did that a bunch of times until it was secure and it wasn't going to go anywhere. So then afterwards, I had to prime it with the gray spray paint because I forgot to do that, obviously. So I did that, and then I just had to spray paint it blue. And once I spray painted it blue, it was just like, it was smooth sailing from here on out. I spray painted the little rivets blue, and then I just had to do like a clear top coat, and my bubble gun was done. The bubble gun isn't heavy. I'd say at most it weighs like maybe 7 pounds. What's unfortunate is that I can't really use the bubble features inside of most conventions because they don't allow that, but it's really fun to use outdoors at the convention, like on the lobby areas. The voice actor for Brooke and the voice actor for Crocodile approve of this weapon, but I love this prop and I'm so excited to take it to more conventions in the future. If you want to see how I made other aspects of my Lilith Vegapunk costume, I have dedicated videos to them. So yeah, please go watch it if you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a great day! Cosplay!